Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is former DNC chair and governor of Vermont, Howard Dean. Governor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
Of course, it is a really exciting day. Today is Super Tuesday, so happy Super Tuesday to all of the political junkies out there. And on this big day in the presidential race, what's on your radar? What are you looking for? What are you thinking about? Let us know.
Well, obviously Biden is going to continue his march towards the uncontested nomination. What I'm particularly interested in is how well Nikki Haley is going to do, and can she continue on after Super Tuesday? She has some chance of winning in Vermont. The problem is the right wing dominates the very tiny Republican Party that we have here. But I think a fair amount of Democrats may cross over and vote for her. Our governor is a Republican. And he's already announced that he's voting for Nikki Haley, which is kind of courageous of him. You don't see much backbone in the Republican Party these days.
Do you think she has a viable path forward? Let's talk about that a little bit. We saw over the weekend Nikki Haley secured her first primary win in D.C., but no other states. What does that pathway to victory look like for her?
The pathway to victory looks like for her leads through the courtroom for Donald Trump. If he gets convicted of, he's already been convicted of one thing in New York. And if he gets convicted in some of these other trials, I think that Republicans may get a little nervous about him. And I think that's Nikki's play, is to stay in to see what happens in court with Trump.
He has a ton of legal setbacks. He owes about $500 million in legal setbacks already. He was indicted 4 times, has 91 charges. How big of a deal do you think this is in the rest of the election? Because when we see the polls for his support, regardless of legal challenges, are unwavering in his favor.
It's true, but eventually there are people in the position who are going to vote in November, who are going to be a little nervous about having a felon in the White House. So I think what you're going to see, March 25th is a really big day. 2 things happen on March 25th. One is the federal case against Trump in New York starts. But the other is that's the day that Trump has to put up $450 million worth of real estate and pay into the New York settlement that he's already lost. So these things are going to go forward. There's not a lot they can do about it, despite the delay tactic that's worked in some of the other areas. So those are the 2 big ones. The biggest, he may have succeeded in delaying the biggest case of all, which is the one in Georgia, where he's on tape trying to steal the election and intimidate this Republican Secretary of State. And if that should happen to find a guilty verdict, then he probably there's a good chance that he would not be the nominee.
Nikki Haley, as we know, is still in this race, but many strategists, pollsters that I've talked to say effectively this is already a general election race. Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee. So you're saying you don't totally agree with that notion?
Well, no, I think that's the likely outcome. But I think you asked me, what about Nikki staying in? And I think the play is they're going to need somebody else if Trump keeps getting convicted.
I do want to talk about President Biden for a moment. In a New Yorker piece just released, I believe yesterday or earlier this week, he thinks that he is the strongest Democrat to go against Donald Trump because he's the only one who has beat him before. Do you think he's the strongest Democrat?
Well, who knows? I mean, it's going to be Biden, so there's any point in speculating about who else might, woulda, coulda, shoulda, as they say. He is going to be the candidate. I saw an article this morning in Semaphore, which is sort of an inside the Beltway, high-end gossip column. But it's great. It's good stuff. They're very, very good reporters and writers there. And I think what Biden wants to be is unchained. I think his staff is trying to make him be as presidential as possible. And Biden just wants to get in and mix it up with Trump. And I think that's a really good idea. Because Trump has got a pretty fragile ego. And I think when Biden starts going after him about being a crook, I think that's going to be incredibly helpful.
Polls against the 2 in a head-to-head matchup between Trump and Biden are very close, really breakneck. But according to a recent Harris X Forbes poll, Trump is beating Biden by 4 points. As a Democrat, does that scare you?
No, I mean, it scares me for the future of the country, because I think if Trump gets elected, the country is over. We're not going to be the leading power. He's already said that Russia can do whatever the hell they want in Europe. I mean, I find that to be one of the most irresponsible things any American president could have ever said. It's just shocking. He has no understanding of what he's doing. And he doesn't care, because it's not about being a good president. It's about being the person people are always talking about. And that's his illness. I think there's a long way between now and the election, and I don't put too much stock in polls. I wish Biden were polling better, because I think he deserves to be polling better. Ironically, a lot of the people who are voting for Trump are benefiting because of Biden's economy. Especially, he's put tons and tons of jobs in the most rural parts of America, including high-tech chip producers, and revitalized the automobile industry. And this is a guy who cares about blue-collar voters, and the blue-collar voters are saying, well, no, we're voting for Trump. I mean, basically, what Trump is totally unsuccessful in business and unsuccessful in politics, but where he's really successful is selling to the American people. And his pitch is, none of this is your fault. And so when white rural voters who have really struggled in the last few decades are angry, which is understandable, Trump says, it's a little Hitlerian. Trump says, oh, it's all the black people, and it's the gay people, and it's the women. There's all this anti-abortion stuff that's coming out of the Republican Party. It's not because they're really against abortion. It's because abortion, it gives women power over their own bodies. They don't like that, and that's not the way it used to be. So the real problem here is that the economic benefits, which will kick in for sure, even stronger than they are now, before the election, is not enough, because the Republican platform can basically be signed up, be stated as two words. One is hate and the other is rage. And it's very, very hard to make any kind of rational progress against that.
To your point then, do you believe that Republicans are better and winning at messaging over Democrats? Because you're saying Biden deserves to be polling better. Immigration and economy, as we know, are the top issues facing voters. And according to a Harris x Forbes poll, more voters think that Trump would be better suited handling those issues than Biden.
There's no evidence of that at all. Trump ran up the largest deficit in the history of the country. And Trump has done nothing. Trump stopped the bipartisan immigration bill. So don't tell me that Trump's going to be better on immigration.
I'm not saying that. Voters are
no,
saying
I know
that.
you're not.
So how much does voter sentiment matter? Because optics really are everything, because they're the ones going to the polls.
Right. But fortunately, we have 6 or 8 months before the election, so to turn that around.
And how do Democrats turn that around? How do they say, hey, this is really Biden's economy. You are doing, because the sentiment is, hey, my wallet hurts. Hey, it's hard to put groceries on the table. How do they turn that messaging around?
Well, first of all, the economy has to continue to keep doing better. Secondly, there's a fundamental structure problem. There was a very well-known writer in Germany many, many years ago that said that the politics is nothing but a substitute for war. And the Republicans understand that. They are a top-down organization that are very well organized, and really almost they do this with military discipline. The trouble is, it makes it impossible for them to govern in a democracy, as Trump showed, because he was a ridiculous figure in the presidency. The Democrats are incredibly disorganized and intellectual, and they can govern well because they have good ideas and they can get things done. But they are awful at campaigning because they're not disciplined, and everyone thinks they should be able to say what they want, and they don't come together and work terribly well together. They're going to have to learn to change that, and before it's too late. As Hitler rose to power with his very disciplined cadre of people, there were some very courageous liberal parties, and eventually they all ended up in concentration camps. And so, I don't hold out a lot of hope for the United States of America if we elect Trump. I think we'll be gone on the world stage. I think that's going to lead to huge inflation because we won't be the world's currency reference anymore. And I also think that it's not going to happen immediately, but it will happen much more quickly than people think it will. Our trading relationships are going to be disrupted because Putin's going to start putting pressure on Russia, and Europe won't be able to sustain that pressure without us. And Trump's made it pretty clear that he doesn't care. Stuff is connected here. And I think that's what the Democrats understand that the Republicans don't. The Republicans are all about power, and that's all they care about. And as long as they're in power, they really don't care what they have to say to get it in power. And that's the danger we have here.
Governor, you're really sounding the alarm bells here. You're the former chair of the DNC. Do you think the DNC from the top down across the country in each state, do you think they're doing a good job of relaying what you think is this really strong message?
I don't think you can blame the DNC when you have a Democratic president, because the DNC is really a creature of the Democratic president. They run the show. As you may remember, although you may be too young for this, when I was the DNC chair,
50 state strategy.
Well, that was violently opposed by everybody in Washington who was in the Democratic Party. I wouldn't give the Congress any money because I wanted it all to go out to the states. And we won the House and the Senate in 2006 as a result of that. And then Barack Obama, who actually very generously credited me with some of the stuff, although his team was fantastic, but it had to be done differently. And we've lost that now. We haven't done that differently. We got to stop trying to be a Washington-centric party. We've got to start getting out into the grassroots. We've lost an enormous amount of legislative seats, school board seats, and so forth in the last 20 years, and we can win that back. And there are a lot of younger groups of younger people. Run for Something is one that I always talk about. They recruit at the local level for school boards and select boards and city councils and things like that. That's what we've got to get going in the Democratic Party, and we need to support that. And that's been missing since I left the DNC.
You said a really interesting comment a week ago that I want to dive a little deeper into more. You said you believe that President Biden could easily beat former President Trump in a push-up contest. Voters are concerned about both Trump and Biden's age, but more so with Biden's. Do you think those concerns are valid?
No, I really don't. I think Trump is crazy, so I think that's valid. But I think, yes, does Biden stumble over words and things like that? Yeah, but the honest truth is, and I'm not terribly close to Biden. I spent an hour with him in an airport once. I had a much closer relationship with almost every other Democratic president going back before Carter. But I have to say, I think Biden may be the best on domestic issues, maybe the best president we've had since Lyndon Johnson. I mean, when you think of what he did, now Clinton did a lot, especially for some of the governors because he had that connection. But Biden has basically fundamentally changed a lot of things for a lot of people. If you're a Democrat, you care about equal representation for women and minorities on the courts. He's done more of that than anybody, including Barack Obama. The Inflation Reduction Act put jobs in rural areas which have been hemorrhaging jobs for generations, and that's all changed. Imagine going to the picket lines. Now, for your audience, who's probably business-oriented, more Republican, although, it's a thoughtful audience, that's a big deal. It may not be an attractive deal, but it sends a pretty strong message to working people that he cares about them. And I think he does. That's his whole career. This guy is a centrist, and he has gotten a tremendous amount done. And I think that's what you need, is you need a guy who's going to do things. He is obviously totally capable. He is not John F. Kennedy, who was so dashing and so erudite and so forth and so on. But if you look at the job he does every single day, he gets stuff done and more quickly than one might think. Imagine, he would have had immigration solved by now if it hadn't been for Trump and the lack of backbone of the Republicans. He got put together, giving up some points that the Democrats wanted. He put together with Mitch McConnell an immigration bill, which had to overcome the nuttiness of the right-wing senators, but there are a lot fewer of those than there are in the House. And then the House Republicans killed a bill that was put together by Republicans in the Senate and Democrats in the Senate. It would have fixed a lot of the immigration problems. And so I think Biden's doing a great job, I have to say. And does he stumble over words? Sure. So what? He's competent, qualified, and doing a really good job.
Do you think, though, in turn, that the Democratic Party's messaging surrounding President Biden's mental acuity has been strong enough? Because you're giving a litany here of his accomplishments, but more voters than not are concerned about his mental acuity. As we know, they're also concerned about Trump. He has made plenty of gaffes on the campaign trail. He mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. He also mixed up the president of Hungary's prime minister. He called the leader of Turkey. But a special counsel report described Biden as a, quote, elderly man with a poor memory. So how does the Democratic Party, how does the Biden administration get past this roadblock here for them?
You just beat Trump in a push-up contest. But don't take him on in a cheeseburger eating contest.
But do you think President Biden should say, hey, Trump, I want to debate you. I will debate you. I will get out there. He didn't do the Super Bowl interview. Do you think he needs to be out there more, mixing it up?
He's going to be out there in about 2 days when the State of the Union comes down. Let's see. That's a big test for him. Let's see how he does. But what I'd really like to see is people have some appreciation of the day-to-day record. I mean, you can complain, and you should, about the inflation and the food industry ripoffs and all that kind of stuff. If you think Donald Trump, who kissed the you-know-what of every corporation in the United States as long as they gave him money to do it, is going to do anything about inflation, I think you got another thing coming. So Biden is working his butt off to do the right things. He's mostly successful. He's also good at bipartisan things, which Trump was never good at. And Biden understands government, and I think Trump has no understanding of government. But for Trump, it's all about Trump. For Biden, it's about the country.
I still am curious, though, about the optics, especially when it comes to the economy, because you can rattle off all of these successes. By the numbers, right, the economy is better this year than it is last year. But if people don't feel that, how do you make that pitch to them?
You've got to keep working at it. We've got 6 more months to go to continue to make the economy better.
As we sit here less than 9 months from the presidential election, we are on Super Tuesday now. What sticks out to you?
What sticks out to me is the danger to the United States of America. Most people who are alive today have never experienced a world in which America was not the #1 country in the world, and the biggest had the most ability to either feed suffering people or to push off bullies like Putin or Adolf Hitler, for that matter. Most people do not experience what it was like to be a second-class power, which we were for a long time until World War I. That will be Trump's legacy should he win. Is we may lose our democracy because he clearly is surrounding himself with people who don't care about democracy, as was announced at the Conservative Political Action Committee, which I couldn't believe. You're going to get quite an experience if you vote for Donald Trump and he wins, because you will no longer be #1 anywhere. And it's a very dangerous world out there, and there are a lot of people who are willing to harm us. I think Biden understands that. I think Trump doesn't care, because all Trump cares about is Trump.
As we've been talking about, this seems to be, every indication suggests that this is going to be a 2020 sequel. Specifically, what do you think then is the future of the Democratic Party?
I think the Democratic Party's got to get organized. I really do. I mean, that has nothing to do with Biden's campaign, because when you have a presidential campaign, you are organized or you don't win. And obviously, they have the ability to organize well. We have got to take a page from what the Republicans have done, not in their behavior and certainly not in their platform of hate and rage, but we have got to start organizing at the local level. And it's hard work. I always say that Washington is basically middle school on steroids. They work hard and they're very smart, but all they care about is themselves. And you got to get outside into the country, and you've got to have good people in office that care about other people. And that does not define a great portion of the Republican Party. You asked me at the beginning about Nikki Haley, and so I'm going to be interested to see if Nikki Haley wins the Republican primary in Vermont, because Trump, this is the lowest state in terms of Trump voters in the country. They had less than 31% last time. But inside the Republican Party, he may have a majority. which means there will be no Republican Party, and there isn't one. We have a Republican governor who publicly said he voted for Biden and is supporting Haley, and said already under no circumstances he's voting for Trump in this coming election. There used to be a wing of the Republican Party that was like that. They're conservative, they're business oriented, they're sensible. And that was before they decided that women, black people, and gay people were their enemies. And they have turned this country into a battlefield. And I think that's a big mistake. It may make you feel good. Actually, it doesn't make you feel good, but you may feel better for a moment when you can rage and scream and yell and carry on about how terrible the Republicans are and how women should know their place and all that kind of stuff. That is not going to build the country that you're going to be happy in, and it certainly isn't going to build the country that your children are going to be happy in.
Governor Howard Dean, thank you so much for joining me. We will end it there. Happy Super Tuesday, and you are welcome back anytime.
Thanks for having me on, Brittany.